Welcome to Enlightenment Strikes, a Saving Cities podcast. I'm Diane LaRusso. In each episode, a member of our team hosts a conversation with an expert in a place-related field, from accessibility to zoning and everything in between. Today's guest is happy Black man and professional gay Densil Porteous. Over a 6-week period earlier this year, Densil was named CEO of Pride Fund One, a new effort launched last year by Columbus-based venture firm Loud Capital. Then, he was appointed the interim executive director of Stonewall Columbus, the legacy LGBTQ advocacy organization looking to find its path forward amid lingering challenges. And finally, Densil was appointed to the 16-citizen working group tasked with developing plans for a citizen review board to provide oversight to the city's police division in the aftermath of protests over the murder of George Floyd. Aware also of the importance of the less discussed role representing Black professional people as incredibly competent, exemplary leaders who not only can but should be included at decision-making tables, Densil's a guy with a lot on his shoulders, but he carries it joyfully and is surely making a huge difference for those who will follow in his footsteps. Let's hear from him now. Densil, thank you for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm pretty excited to be here and to share a little bit of my story and hopefully have a great conversation with you.
Well, thanks. I think that there's a lot of your personal experience that informs your professional work, and clearly just the way you're put together trying to make folks happy and build communities in every place that you've been. So I know that a lot of that activity has happened very recently. You've become a part of a lot of the moving and shaking that's happening in Columbus, Ohio, but your story starts in Jamaica. Would you tell us a little bit about the journey that brought you from your birthplace to how you've landed here in Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah. Well, I'll try to do that in a quick story. But the journey itself is multifaceted, interconnected. But I think you've already hit something that I think the journey sort of is central, and I think it's just the notion of happiness and striving for that. So maybe that's the central part of my journey to this place, is that I think everything that I've done has been to find personal happiness, but really more about helping other people find their own happiness and whatever that means. Being born in Jamaica at the time that I was, the country was in itself going up through a state of upheaval and rife. And my mother, being a young single mother of 4 kids, elected to leave the country. She was in her late 20s at this point in time when she left the country, and she had 4 kids.
Wow.
And came to America to live in Brooklyn. We moved to Brooklyn, and I think it's sort of the notion of the American dream. I mean, I think even in Jamaica, a country that's not so far away from the U.S., the belief of the American dream, the better opportunity for your family and to be able to do all the things that you want to, really drove her to give her family a better chance of existence. So even as a single mother, when we came to the United States, it was still a struggle. My mom didn't finish high school. She didn't have a diploma. And I can remember when she moved, being that she was still working and figuring out how to work full time, she started taking night classes at a college university not too far away from our home. She did have to take I think 3 or 4 buses and trains to get there. But the reality was it wasn't too far, right? But for a single mom who didn't have a car, you had to take public transit, and that would add a half an hour to an hour of her commute. That really wasn't too far. But I think watching her go through that process really instilled in me a drive and passion to attain highest levels of education, which I think has always been important for me in all of my experiences. To one, show her that I could do it, and that she inspired me to be there. in that space. My mom passed away when I was 15 years old, so 1995. I guess technically I was 14 when she passed away, but that inspiration still exists in terms of all that I do. I think my drive for being as giving and open of my time and my energy really comes from everything that I've ever seen her do prior to her passing away. I was lucky enough that my mom believed in me so much that she sacrificed moving from Brooklyn when I was probably just about to go to middle school, and moved my siblings and I to the border of Queens and Long Island. So that I could go to a better school and have a better opportunity of an education. I think as she knew as a young Black man that the society was already going to be a challenge for me. I didn't know that. And I was a little kid. I didn't know better. The world was pretty much great. And I think my time after she moved and made that sacrifice, she started commuting. Her commute to New York to go to work was almost 2 hours in the morning. But that was her sacrifice she made for her kids to be able to have a better education, even in middle school and high school. When she passed away in 1995, I moved to Atlanta to live with my mom's aunt, my mom's sister, which was my aunt. My family, my siblings and I all kind of split up and they've gone to their separate ways. But I was so privileged to move in with my aunt and uncle in Georgia. My aunt is an immeasurably educated woman who would never tell you that she is. Columbia, what is that over in London? England. I can't think of the name of it, but all these schools where you always read about in books and you think, oh wow, the smartest people go there. Well, that's what she did. And so living in that house with her, it was sort of like there was no denying that I was going to further my education because that's just what was going to have to happen. Even if my mom wasn't there to push me anymore, that was going to be my aunt's legacy and sort of perseverance. But my aunt was also a journalist, and she and her husband worked for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They worked for the Charlotte Observer before that. And they sort of probably gave me a little bit of bite of the bug for journalism and my interest in understanding things and getting deeper and to the heart of the matter. They also lit for me a passion for learning and discovery, reading, critique. And I took all of that with me off to college when I went to Kenyon College. Kenyon College, I always say, found me. I was a student in Georgia, living in Decatur, Georgia, not really thinking about four-year colleges in the center of Ohio, predominantly white four-year colleges in the center of Ohio.
Right.
For me, it was you're going to UGA, you might go to Emory if you're thinking about college. So when Kenyon discovered me, it was a really great opportunity for me to branch out and try something different. And I spent 4 beautiful years in that community learning about myself, but I think also really thinking about how to become a lifelong learner, learning that language of what lifelong learning is, being inspired to understand how we give back to the community and to think about not necessarily the legacy that we leave, but the story that we leave behind. That's also something that I think was really important. Going to Kenyon was an interesting experience for me because it is a predominantly white institution. It was at the time, and I think I used to always joke and say when I started there, I felt like a raisin in a bowl of cream of wheat, and by the time that I left, I felt like I was a raisin in a bowl of oatmeal. Right. So the slight distinction is right. Like it was really white when I started. By the time it got a little bit browner, but you still stuck out a little bit because there were so few of you, but you felt okay about it. During my time in college, that's when a lot of my own personal identity started to come out. Right. I accepted the fact that I was LGBTQ. I kind of finally said, "Hey, people, I'm gay. This is a reality of who I am." In college, I also leaned more into my nonprofit volunteer work. That was when I started serving on the first board that I ever did. Was when I was in college, and so that's sort of led me to the space that I exist in now, where I continue to do work within the nonprofit space. After leaving college, I worked for 4 years as an admissions officer at Kenyon, but then got bitten by sort of the bug of admissions, the desire to help people find connection and community, to ensure that people understood education could be a benefit and a value for them to further whatever dreams and passions that they had. And that education may not be for everyone, but we're going to help you find the right place for you. And my experience in nonprofit education and admissions was some of the most phenomenal. I always tell people, if you have a chance to work in a small admissions office, do it. You learn so many skill sets, from marketing and communications to business and management, to recruiting, to staffing. Again, I think, the joke is everything I learned in first grade. I think everything I learned professionally, I learned in admissions. And that's a truth speak there. I was able to take a lot of those skill sets with me, into the nonprofit world, and on all of the board services that I was doing. Ended up serving as secretary on boards, vice chair, and chair and president in certain arenas. But it's been a phenomenal experience to be able to have that opportunity to use all of sort of the back story to inform all of the things that I'm doing now. As I sit as interim director at Stonewall, I laughed and joked with someone the other day. Said, "I'm finally a professional gay. Like I'm professional gay. Before this, I was a volunteer gay, and now I'm professional because that's where my money is coming from." So it's kind of funny. I sit as interim director of Stonewall, and that's where I'm leaning into. But I also, as you've referenced, I'm the CEO of Pride Fund One, which is a venture firm, which has been exciting, but also centered around LGBTQ community and uplifting that community. And then within my own sort of business that I've done, it really has focused on uplifting and working with nonprofits, social service nonprofits, but then adding that extra element of helping and identifying ways to open up access and encourage LGBTQ community connection and uplifting within those spaces. So it all comes to one central nexus of one, helping people find happiness, which is what I said at the very beginning, right? And whatever happiness that is, I don't really know, but I'm going to lean into it. But also bringing your full self and identity to all that you do. And as a gay Black Caribbean or non-man, right? Like for me, all of the things that as spaces I exist in now, are tied directly to the identity that I affirm. That's a lot.
That was great. It's so interesting because American society, at least, I'm Generation X, firmly smack in the middle of that generation. And at least from my perspective, a lot of us grew up and then assumed identities based on the work that we found or the work that we found inspiring. Not necessarily those first few jobs right out of college, but at some point hit a stride with, what we were doing. And maybe that's limited to my circle. But I have a 20-year history in nonprofit work as well, as you know.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating to me to think about how that almost worked in reverse for you, in that your natural identity now has assumed your work life in some way. And I wonder how your identifications fostered the love that you found to Central Ohio after having lived on both ends of the country or all ends of this country, and having had such a interesting journey in terms of family life, that you would choose this place as home, and how those things connect for you.
It's a great question, and I think I said something probably in my response to, and I don't know if you caught it when I talked about Kenyon choosing me. I think it's the same thing. I think Columbus chose me. I don't think I chose Columbus, because I would have not chosen Columbus, right? If you just, I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been my first thought. But I think Columbus chose me, and I say that because what Columbus did in a very important part of my life, which I didn't realize, was that it allowed me to fail, and it caught me. It allowed me to test my limits, and it pushed me. It allowed me to understand the complexities of identity, and it did so in a place where I felt safe. And so I think when I think of Columbus, it is home to me, because I think in a home, all of those things you should be able to do, and do without fear of without fear, period, full stop, right? And I think that's what Columbus somehow gave to me. I'm not sure how or why, but it did. Even when I left and I moved to the Bay Area, I was there for 6 years. I was back here 3-4 times a year, because it was just in this space where I became of age and I understood who I was, and I took all of those things with me to other places and leveraged those things that I learned to be better. And here I came back, right? It's the prodigal son returns. Maybe, I don't really know. In my mind, I try to use that story and tell myself that's really what it is. But I came back in 2012 because I came back to Columbus with the full intent of helping create it and continuing to push it, just as it pushed me, to be better than I knew that it could be. And I think that's just what it is. I wrote a piece. Gosh, how long ago was this? I wrote something several years ago that spoke to this, sort of like how I became fully formed here in Columbus, and how it's important for me to be able to give back to this community so that other people can become fully formed, or strive to be fully formed. Because I think I'm a human in progress, so I'm not done yet, whatever that means, right? But I know I'm not done, and I think that this place gives you that opportunity to be a human in progress and be okay with that, and other people are okay with that. This place at times, which I think is right, pushes you to hold yourself accountable. Accountability is very important to me. All these things happen here, so I can't say that I found any of all of those things in other places. In my time in New York, in my time in Atlanta, in my time in San Francisco, I don't think that the way that these pieces come together here existed in any of those other places.
So for the folks listening who don't know, Kenyon College is located in Gambier, Ohio. And as you mentioned, kind of cream of wheat at the beginning and maybe a little more oatmeal. I like your analogy. What is it, about an hour outside of Columbus or so?
Yes.
It's not immediately adjacent to the metropolitan area. What was your introduction or invitation into getting involved in the Columbus metropolitan sort of area leadership the way you have?
I was a young college student, and I remember coming into my full identity as an LGBTQ person, being a part of that community, and not having that in Columbus. Not having that in Gambier. And Columbus was where I came to find that out. I came to Columbus to be gay, and it was enlightening to me to see the places and spaces in which people existed and how they were their full selves. And I think that just was the beginning of my connection to the city. Was, again, it's a place where I came of age, and my ability to be and do so freely was great. I think as I grew and as Columbus grew, we grew together. We're growing together. When I left to go to the Bay Area, I realized that. That there was still something pulling me back to this place. Like, it just was I couldn't even, for the life of me right now, still couldn't describe it. And I knew that I had to come back and give back because Columbus did so much for me. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't describe it more than that. You see it, you feel it. And I came back and I said, I came back with the full intention of creating Columbus. When I was in San Francisco, I started reaching out to, in San Francisco, they're called Board of Supervisors. Here, it's City Council or whatever. And I started having meetings with supervisors. I knew Bevan Dufty, and I knew these folks, and I was reaching out to them saying, hey, how can I plug into the city so that I can be a leader, so that I can help move things forward and manage processes. And it was great to shadow and listen and watch what they were doing. And then at some point I realized that my politics were a little bit less conservative than San Francisco. And I came back to Columbus, where, again, it was home for me, right? Where in Columbus, the understanding of economic uplift versus government uplift, people understand sort of the mix of that. Socially, politically, this place is just, it's right for me. And I think it allows people to test themselves, to figure out what their boundaries are, and then and then maybe sometimes push those boundaries even a little bit further for themselves. But
You made a lovely comment about safety and being able to exist, especially in that sort of young person age, straight out of college or a few years out, and being able to operate sort of without a fear of failure. Will you tell us about one of your failures and what you learned from it?
wow. Oh, wow, that's a good one. I don't know, because I don't see things as failures, so that's hard. Honestly, it's I don't. That's not a thing. Like it's not a thing. Everything is a lesson learned. Like literally everything is a
That's
lesson learned.
fair.
Now, if I, well, here's an example of a failure, and I think it's probably going to be interesting because these are the moments that I see as failures. It's moments when I fail myself. So not necessarily something that I strive to do in terms of like a work product or an outcome thing, but I think oftentimes when I fail to remember who I am and what I'm about, that's when I get myself let down. So an example might be for me anyway, right? Like if I'm a gay black man, I often exist in spaces where you don't see a lot of me. And for me, it's important to speak up and be present in these spaces, and to challenge sort of the conflict where people don't believe I should be in these spaces and bringing my full self. And I remember, and this is a failure moment for me, where I had shared with um, team members on the staff that I was a gosh, I was nominated to be America's Gay Bachelor for Ohio, and this was a couple years ago.
It's not
And
like prom king.
sort of. But I shared this link with my team and said, "Hey, would you vote for me for this?" And my manager at the time came back and told me that that was inappropriate to share with the team, and I was sort of I, I think in the moment in the space I wasn't sure. I mean, I got it. I think I got it. I understood what my manager was trying to say, but I also didn't believe it because other people were sharing links for Girl Scout cookies, support my church, and here I was just saying, vote for me for America's Gay Bachelor, like to be from
Mhm.
like whatever. And so it was a failure to me because I didn't speak up. I didn't go back to my manager at the time and say, actually, I think you're wrong in this space, because if you're not allowing me to do that and bring my full self to work, then you shouldn't let Sally talk about her daughter's Girl Scout cookies, and you shouldn't let Jim post about, his church. Like, and so, but I never did that. So I think when I think about failure moments, I think about those moments because again, there are other people who may have been on the team who felt voiceless or saw that happen and then felt like, oh my gosh, I can't bring my full self to work. And those are the places where again, failure for me is failure, because I didn't do the right thing in that moment. But everything else, but it's a lesson. Even then, it's still a lesson learned. Right? Like, because from that moment on, I never did that. I never allowed that to happen again. Right? I never allowed the voiceless not to have a voice. If someone said a thing to me that I didn't think was actually right, I would say, well, hold on, let's think about this. So I think that that failure is not a thing that I believe in, because I think everything is a lesson learned. You strive to do better, be better all the time. You work towards a thing, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But you tried your best. At least that's what I hope. But yeah, failure is not a. I don't know that word. I don't use it very often. Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important lesson for all of us to remember that, even in those moments that we're disappointed with not speaking up or not having the right words in a moment, that gives us the runway to come up with the right answer for next time. And even if you didn't say it out loud, now you've practiced your new script in your head and you're ready for the next time somebody says something similar because you've got the thing you wish you would have said in the first place all
and
practiced.
I think that's a good thing, is that you should acknowledge the moments where what you were trying to do didn't happen, or where you should have done something that didn't happen. And then I think what you just said, exactly right, like you then prepare for the next moment to be sure that you're ready for it. And that's the most important thing. As long as I think we're intentional about being prepared for the next moment, then I think we're moving forward in the right direction.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about pride in places. And I know that obviously is a word that is very much used by the LGBTQ community. And I can see on your t-shirt right now, it says LGBTQIA+. So please correct me if I should be referring to this in a different way that's more respectful.
Yeah, yeah. One, I'm going to say, you know what you know until you don't know it. All right. So what you know is what you know. And I'm the same way. I think. So just to speak to the letters, just for a moment. I mean, this is an appropriate way to do it if you'd like to. It just depends on the community that you're talking, right? Like LGBTQIA plus. Some people might say, well, you don't necessarily want to include allies on this. Maybe you just really want to focus on the LGBTQ community. Maybe whatever that moment is specific to that language. So I think that's what you should always think about, is just, think about the moment that you're in, and whether you're talking to everyone or just a subset of that population. But as I said, you know what you know, and if you don't know it, then someone hopefully will kindly give you more information to expand your understanding. But I think however you want to go into the space, I think that's the most important thing.
Well, I certainly intend to be respectful and inclusive wherever I can. I guess in talking about pride, not just in terms of personal identity, but also in terms of the pride you feel for the place that you're in and what that place offers you, and then how you contribute to it. I think it's very interesting and a great effort that Loud Capital announced the Pride Fund One venture capital fund. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and why it was established?
Yeah, yeah. So I think you're hitting on the place and space thing, and so I'm going to wrap it in that, because it is actually, because all of this is actually about place and space to me. I don't. At some point in time, I realized that I refuse to place myself in spaces and places where I don't feel welcomed, or I don't feel like taking on the challenge of allowing myself to be in that space. And that means organizations, people, whatever that is. And Pride Fund One is a place and a space that I want to put all of my energy into each and every moment of my waking existence. And oftentimes while I'm sleeping, it's in my head. Because we have an opportunity with Pride Fund One to uplift and empower a community that doesn't always feel like they have the space to do so within the entrepreneurial and venture space in particular. And so Pride Fund One, our main focus, our focus is on working with LGBTQ ventures and entrepreneurs who are looking, and we're looking to uplift and empower them. Investment return is also very important, but again, we're looking to uplift and empower our LGBTQ folks who haven't often had the opportunity in these spaces. The reality is, when you sit down and you look at venture firms, you're not going to find a lot of gay Black men leading them, or funds. So again, for me, it's important to show up in that space so that someone can see me in that space and say, hey, I can do that. And I'm also, I, Densil, am capable of doing that. So therefore, it actually elevates even the expectation, right? Because if people know me, they know I have high expectations of a lot of things, and I'm going to work to the highest level. So again, I think it helps folks who are out in the world say, wow, look, someone is clearly capable and able, who's also gay and Black and has high expectations. So I'm going to strive for that. I think ultimately also what it does is it gives LGBTQ entrepreneurs a space to feel comfortable presenting their full selves. Up until just this middle of June, it was still somewhat, in quotes, illegal to fire someone for being gay at work. Like, why would you want to bring your full self to a space where you can get fired? Even though, we were happy and excited about the Obergefell ruling, so, that we can get married, but at the same time, you can get married today and then you could have gone to work tomorrow and gotten fired. And it was still like, whoa, this is mind blowing. So now people, again, our space in this place is to make people feel comfortable bringing their full identities to the workplace, to wherever that is. So if venture capital folks are seeing these really talented, gifted LGBTQ entrepreneurs, doing this work, then they may just also encourage more people to be their full selves. So I think that's for me why this space is so important. It started in an interesting way. Friends sort of leaning into it, right? Again, this is why I love Columbus so much, because this is what we do here. We always are thinking about how we can uplift an entire community, not just an individual, but honestly, like how can we all rise together, which is beautiful, And so when my friend Wolf Star came and said, "Hey, look, we're doing this with Loud Capital. Would you be interested in being a venture partner with us and some other folks?" And venture partners, brain power. Really, that's all he was asking us to do, is to sit down together, think about what this could look like, how it could uplift the community, and how connected could we be. Within a matter of 6 months, it was on fire. Like everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. Like, why haven't we thought about this before? This ecosystem here is ripe for it. Like, we have this developing Midwest entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have the venture people here, and we have these really great connections to Silicon Valley, to New York, to all of these places where venture is existing, but also business may be coming from." We launched technically in January with our first public news of this last year, and it was a slow, little, quiet, like rumble out in the world. But even that slow, little, quiet rumble out in the world, when we went out in January, people kept thinking, "Hey, are you only in Columbus? Are you Columbus-based? You should be more than Columbus. Oh, we're over here and overseas. We're in this," and so it just was really great to see how quickly people outside of Columbus said, "You can't only do this in Columbus. This is bigger than just this moment." We had started thinking about what that would look like. We were working towards going down to South by Southwest in March for that wonderful event, and then COVID hit, and then bloop. It was literally like, pivot, everyone. Let's think differently. But the benefit of this moment is that it gave us time to really think about how we move forward, to be more intentional about our expansion, and then to honestly bring in more partners into the process. And so, one of our partners was down in South by Southwest. They flew back up right after everything happened, and we took like a month or two to just be quiet. We watched as COVID-19 just took over the states, and then behind the scenes, after that month period of time, we got together and we started thinking, okay, like how do we turn that sort of engine back on again? Mm-hmm. And we started thinking about, leaning into Pride Month and maybe using that as a moment of, I'm a marketing communications person. I said, let's lean into Pride Month. Let's leverage that as the second rebirth of the moment after COVID-19. And then behind the scenes, I didn't realize that they were talking about, okay, we need to actually identify leadership for what we're doing. And when they came to me to ask me to be CEO, I again said, yes, this is the space and place I want to exist in. If I can, again, be a brown person, a gay Black man showing up representative, leading this fund, it would make sense to me. And I leaned into it, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. But it's all hard work, right? I think I'm still able to help people and communities connect with each other, able to uplift underrepresented populations. So all of the things that I do in my nonprofit space, I'm able to do in this for-profit space, and bring the skills and talents from all of my back history to it. And there's a wonderful, 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 wonderful nexus between the nonprofit economic uplifting and the for-profit economic uplifting of ultimately underrepresented populations within that space. It's a beautiful marriage, and I'm excited to be able to lean into it as much and connect a lot of communities across these bridges, which has been such a great thing to do.
So it sounds like you're seeing both interest in investment from places other than Columbus, and also probably interest in folks who are looking for your investment from the fund in other places. Are there active, I know you're brand new to this, are there active projects that you're working on right now to fund that you're allowed to tell us a little bit about, or is all of that real top secret?
Yes and yes and yes and no and yes. All of those, right? So I'm great at being coy and circumspect when I necessarily have to. Thank you, marketing background and communications. But I think one of the benefits of COVID-19 was that we had the time and space to really dig into what we were going to present to the world. I am really particular about ensuring that when we start anything that I do, that when I start messaging things, that there's places and resources for people to go to. And so we, again, launched officially the second time in June, and I was like, let's make all of these things be buttoned up. So we came in and we had our story refined, and then we started looking at a couple of story investments. So we launched with our Pride 5 in June. And this was in part with Wolf, so that was really great. Wolf, I should say, Wolf is our managing director. Wolf is also a partner in Atlas Partners and Atlas Ventures, but he is the managing director for the Pride Fund. And the Pride 5 that we launched was our opportunity to tell a story that uplifted all of our LGBTQ ventures, highlighted the diversity of them. So it was LGBTQ entrepreneurs, but male identified, female identified, people of color. Those stories were important. Diversity of age was also important in that space. And then the actual ventures that we're looking at in this Pride 5 is actually really great. So we're looking at a technology venture, sort of a Google Glasses for doctors, which is really great, right? So, real time in surgery, you have these glasses on, you can connect with someone elsewhere to see whether you're doing these things right or kind of getting feedback. So that's one of the wonderful ventures. We are invested in a fashion brand, which I think is really great, an international fashion brand. And the idea here for this one is to be able to bring high end down just a little so that we can have more people engaged in this fashion conversation. So that's exciting for me as well to see that. We are investing in a wine line by someone I've already mentioned, actually. So we're working with Jim Obergefell to help with his wine line, which I think is really exciting. So you can see it's a wide spectrum of what we're doing and how we're engaging, but the vertical is always LGBTQ, and the response is how do we always uplift that particular venture. Yes, again, return is important, but it really is about the uplifting and the legacy and sort of impact that we can make.
That's a fantastic segue. So if you would comment on how having diversity in the community that is equally supported or fostered more to become equitable across the landscape builds pride and strength in the fabric of that community, even for those folks who don't identify with that population necessarily. Why do I, as just somebody who lives in Columbus, who maybe has no particular connection to the LGBTQ community here, although in Columbus, I don't know how you can't. But if, for instance, that person exists, why should they care that somebody's out there making sure that there's investment available for LGBTQ entrepreneurs who want to start businesses?
Yeah, it's funny because I was writing something just last night, and I struggle with this because the only answer I can say is it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's like and I think I use this language. I don't like using these things, but I use it. It's a reflection of my humanity to believe that that's the right thing to do, right? Like I can't think of anything of like it's hard for me to put into words or think about sort of how I inspire or quote unquote convince someone that this is the right thing. Because it just simply is. I think it goes back to actually what I said at the beginning, or something I kind of alluded to in this notion of happiness. And it's so simple. I don't know why. I don't know where this came from with me, but it's just, and I'm not I'm not like this, like, quote unquote Pollyanna or whatever thing it is. I don't think I am. But I just firmly believe that we all want to be happy, whatever that is. I don't know how happiness goes, right? But my thing is, I hopefully happiness doesn't mean hurting someone else. So if your happiness is getting someone else hurt, then I don't want to be a part of that. But we all want to be happy, and I think that it's our responsibility as humans in this world to figure out how we can uplift and empower someone else so that they can get to that happiness moment. And that's just it. So as I talk to people out in the community, it's all, that's the only place I can start from is, don't you want to be happy? Don't you want other people to be happy? Doesn't that inspire you? Like, it inspires me when I turn around and I can see someone happy. That warms my heart. Like, and even if I know that I had a small modicum of ability to help with that happiness, it makes me feel good. I don't need the praise and the thank you for it, but like, there's a little bit of a heartwarming moment where you're like, oh, like that person feels good or found some sort of happiness because of some small sort of part I played. But that's why it's hard for me, right? Like, I struggle to that space of like really giving more justification than that it's the right thing to do. Don't you want to be happy? And so do these people. So how can we not just want to lean into happiness? Like, how can you not want to lean into happiness? I don't, it's hard. That's all I got. Like, I mean, that's literally, that is my line. I was writing this letter last night and all I kept thinking was, come back to is this notion of happiness. Like, we all want to be happy. And so why shouldn't someone else be happy? Not at the expense of your happiness, right? It's not at the expense of someone else's happiness. It shouldn't be. There's enough space for people to be happy, for all of us to be happy. So yeah, I think that's always going to come back to being my response, is that it's the right thing to do because happiness is important for everyone, and we should be able to help each other be happy.
Well, if we started from a point of talking about representation, I think that as an outsider looking at the projects that you're working on, it feels like you're just bringing that level of representation, not only for yourself personally, but through this endeavor to the business community and the community that develops the economics of this place, for communities and for individuals who don't normally necessarily get the kind of attention that other people might get as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I think whether you state it directly or not, it seems all wonderfully connected. So if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about Stonewall Columbus.
Yeah.
There's been some, I guess, political upheaval over the last few years that sort of erupted, or it really exposed itself to the public in 2017 when there were protesters who were arrested at the Pride Festival, and there was some organizational rift. We don't have to go delve into the details of all of that, but it pointed out kind of an odd dynamic for an organization that was built upon a foundation of ensuring representation for an underrepresented community. And I know that you have stated publicly that in your role as interim executive director, that you're hopeful to help rebuild and strengthen the platform for that organization. Will you talk a little bit about why that's important here and how you see those things coming together across our community in a way that will hopefully bring us to a much better point? A little kumbaya, I guess.
I think it's interesting because I think I said to someone earlier today, Stonewall was sort of I'll use the word litmus test for what's happening across the country. Oddly, we didn't realize it then, and we weren't the first, quite frankly. Like, it wasn't the sort of backlash and decisions of an organization. We weren't the first ones to do it. This has been even there was a Stonewall Columbus, there was a Stonewall Cincinnati that had actually a similar falling out many moons ago. At a national level, your HRC had sort of a similar moment where they weren't reflective of or doing action for the entire community. So I think it's not, that moment wasn't new to us. We were part of this litmus test, or whatever you want to call it, that's been happening for quite some time in our community, and it was unfortunate. Stonewall didn't respond correctly. As an organization, we weren't the only ones that didn't respond correctly. But I think it gave other organizations opportunity to respond correctly. And now it's our responsibility to step up to what we did not do then. And I think we have. I commend the leaders before me who have tried to get us to this place. And I will definitely push as hard to get us further to a place where we are uplifting and giving space to those in our community who need it the most. And so yeah, I think we are on the right track. I don't know that we're going to make everyone happy, but I'm going to be darned to try my hardest to pull as many of us along as possible. I think we need to dissect ourselves from our egos. I think that's some of the conversation that definitely happens in this space, that people are so concerned about their own things that they forget that this is larger than any individual person, that this is about a full community. And so I can check my ego at the door and lean into whatever I need to lean into so that I can ensure that we're bringing along as many people as possible. Because at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with me individually. It has everything to do with the larger community of people who we all want to uplift and move forward in a positive way. Will this work continue? Yes. Should it continue? Yes. Is our country doing the same work? Yes. Right. So again, I think Stonewall was a microcosm of a moment that was a litmus test, and now we're seeing what's happening across the country and still having the same conversation. So I think if people really want to move forward, then they lean into the accountability, which they're holding us accountable for actions. But then they also are supposed to help us move forward in that process. Just like hopefully we're helping our country move forward to a place of healing and rectification. So I think I think we'll get there, and I think we are there. I think we're moving in the right direction, which is exciting for me.
Most recently, you were appointed at the beginning of July to Mayor Ginther's Civilian Review Board to, I guess, review and advise and assess issues between the Columbus Police Department and the way they're handling some of the expressed protest. How does that representation in that role relate to or complicate the roles that you play in your other professional lives?
Yeah. So I was appointed to the Civilian Review Board Working Group. And so the Civilian Review Board Working Group will be a group of community-based individuals who will do research in partnership with the city and an associate to understand the best policies and practices to put in place in an official civilian review board in the city.
Got it. Okay.
And the hope is to be able to complete that work by the end of December. The city has started to take some initial actions to create policies that will allow this to happen. So City Council, I think, will be voting on something here today, and then we'll be putting an action on the ballot in November to vote that we can establish a civilian review board, even though we're doing the work behind the scenes still. It was interesting because I think that I don't know that I don't think it complicates anything. I think if anything, it adds wonderful layers of color and context to ensuring the work is done appropriately. And I think if anyone is concerned about the sort of the intersection of it, I think it's probably going to be the city, maybe. I don't know. Right. Accountability I talked about is important. Right. And so when I was asked to sit on the working review board, I will say that I sit in other organizations who have been very vocal about the dissatisfaction with the city and how things have been handled. I have, in very open moments, said that I don't believe the mayor's handled it appropriately. I think he's working to do better. I have very openly, in moments, I'm a part of an organization that has called for the police chief's resignation. And so what I am leaning into is accountability. I'm holding those in elected office, those that our elected offices have hired, I'm holding them accountable. Just like the city and the community is holding me and this organization, Stonewall, accountable to our actions, it's the same thing I'm doing in this particular moment, leaning into it. I hope that the community sees me, the individual, who happens to be head of certain organizations, leaning into everything to be a part of the conversation, to be a part of the dialogue for change. I hope, and through these moments, that the community starts to learn more about me, to understand how I see things and how my heart and head works, because then they will see that I'm not here for the BS. I'm here to hold people accountable, and I'm here to be held accountable. And that's what this is all about. And so my hope is that by the end of the work that the Civilian Review Board Working Group does, is that we've moved whatever vision of a Civilian Review Board forward to a place where more of the community can be behind this idea, where more of the community has voices at the table once it's actually implemented, and where accountability is central to whatever we do moving forward. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful nexus of an opportunity. I was anxious about it at first, quite frankly, but look, I'm here to hold everybody accountable, just like people are holding me accountable. So I'm going to lean into it.
I feel like there's a theme through your life about a beautiful convergence of things that come together in these key moments that seem to define the trajectory that you're on. And I really love that you talk a lot about accountability and representation as things that are really important, not just for um, underrepresented groups and individuals, but also important for our communities as a whole, and the strength that that brings to us by having so many different voices that are able to hold each other accountable. So it's all really lovely. As we kind of wrap up our time together, I wonder what inspiring words or call to action do you have for folks who maybe are in a place that you were in, 15 years ago, looking for a spot or a place to settle and how to get involved and stuck in a place that, maybe they aren't super excited or proud to be a part of yet, or maybe didn't choose for themselves. A lot of folks now, with the economy the way it is and life being the way it is, may be stuck in a place that they didn't choose for themselves. What thoughts do you have to help light their way as they're, going through their own experience of finding their sweet spot the way you have found your sweet spots?
No. I like, it's funny because I don't think there's one, and you just said sweet spots plural. So I think that's something that people need to think about, right? Like, happiness is not a one-time thing, right? And it's moments along a journey. And so I think if we think about it in that way, that's what's helped me, and I've forgotten. You forget that sometimes. I know I've forgotten that, right? Like, happiness is not a one-time thing; it's moments along a journey. And so I think if we are able to, sort of think about it in that regard, then we will be able to motivate ourselves to continue to keep pushing. Because that's what I mean. Every day I think, why do I keep doing it? And I have to remember, happiness again is not a single moment. It's a journey to a place. And all along that process, it's thinking about the other people that you impact, and sort of increase that happiness. I left a job earlier this year where I was not happy, and I had forgotten that it was so important for me to find my happiness, to be happy, so that other people can sort of see that light, right? And I completely forgot, and I knew that my light had diminished, and I could see that it was impacting other people. And I made the choice, right, to remember that moments along the path of happiness, I had to leave that place so that I can get back to working towards happiness, so that my light, whatever that is, could shine some more, so that other people can also see that. So I think that's what I would probably leave with, is that we need to remember that happiness isn't just a one-time thing. It is moments along a journey. And so even though you may be feeling downtrodden in a particular moment in time, remember to look for and seek the happiness that you'll get to keep you moving along that journey. And then to also think about how you can sort of detract from whatever space that's not helping you find that happiness within yourself. It's not always easy to do that, which is why sometimes you have to look outside of that space, right? Until you can get fully happy, right? So for me, maybe work life wasn't my happy place, but my volunteer work helped me find that happy space so that I can keep motivated to continue to do the things that I needed to do until I found my new sweet spot. So yeah, I think that's what I'll probably say, and I'll kind of reaffirming it. Happiness is not a singular moment. It's happiness is moments along a journey, and that's what I think people need to remember. Strive for those happy moments, and that's it.
Well, we're all works in progress, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. That's a fun thing. I don't know. I love that idea of being a work in progress. That's great. We can always be better.
Absolutely. Constantly striving for something better and a willingness to maybe destroy parts of ourselves that weren't the best parts so
Parts.
that we can remake ourselves in a more loving, empathic and thoughtful way of being.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to thank you. It's been really lovely. I appreciate you sharing your time with me today. Um, I hope that folks who may end up listening to this leave with some settled, happy feeling that there are options no matter what their situation is right now, and that your example of community involvement and leadership and willingness to just put yourself out there and do what your heart drives you to do is something that they can take with them and make something happy out of for themselves. Thanks, Denzel.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Denzel for taking the time to chat with me about his projects. You can find more information about Pride Fund 1 and Stonewall Columbus by visiting the links in the show notes. And if you'd like to hit up Denzel for his consulting services, you can find that link here too. That's all for today. Again, I'm Diane LaRusso, and thanks for listening. If you found this conversation to be worthy of your time, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. Take care. See you next time.